Before we get moving on the podcast, just a reminder that the promo code is still and maybe always be Coach Cam, one word. You use that in the My Soccer store, and you get shirts like this, says "Make US Soccer Great Again," and you'd be cool as me. And you get 20% off. Use that promo code, Coach Cam, and you'll be good to go. Other than that, let's get on with the podcast. First up, we have North Carolina versus Virginia women's soccer match postponed over coronavirus and injuries. Thursday's women's soccer game between number 1, North Carolina, and number 10, Virginia, has been postponed because of the roster depletion among the Cavaliers caused by the coronavirus and injuries, the schools announced Wednesday. The game between the two of the most successful programs in the women's soccer involving ACC teams, and that has been postponed this season. The ACC is one of 4 conferences playing women's soccer in the fall, along with the Big 12, SEC, and Sun Belt. So here's, I'm coaching soccer in the winter, hopefully, with the high school team at Millennium High School. It's every year I'm scared to death about the flu because it decimates 5, 10 girls at a time. Even at my college, as we get closer and closer to the playoffs in about October, early November, as we're heading to nationals, it hits guys. And I am a germaphobe. I'm always out there with hand sanitizer. I don't, as soon as they shake hands, I'm like, hand sanitizer. I have a bottle ready for them. I'm always concerned about that because you're going to lose, 1 starter to 5 starters. That's what happens. So this is what we're going to run into. So now we're going to enter a new season. I'm still going to get hit with the flu. And are they going to come out as coronavirus? Or do we trust these tests? I mean, they're going to have a coronavirus of some sort. Will it be COVID-19? I don't know. They're just saying coronavirus. I mean, I'm pretty sure we get coronavirus every year. But is it COVID-19? I don't know. We just call it coronavirus, even though there's many forms of it. So there's so much mass confusion, and everyone's scared to death. And when did we become a country that we are just scared of everything? Everything. It's getting ridiculous. We're never going to go back to normal ever. Can't. To me, it's between private, public versus government schools. I mean, anything that's kind of like run by the government. They are so scared to do anything because they're going to get sued or whatever. I don't know what it is. But everything in Arizona is normal. Everyone's out. Everyone's shopping. Everyone's doing their thing. But schools are shut down. Sports are canceled for the most part. We do have football games going on. I mean, everything's fine. And then, we get all these scares from the media that we're all going to die, and it needs to stop. We are going to die. Every one of us is going to die, but I want to choose how I want to die. But you can't choose how he wants to die, though, because you're going to give him, you know what? Yes, I will choose that. You have the choice of never going outside. You can just stay home the rest of your life. Go ahead. I'm sure the government will take care of you. Find a way. Go. But we have to just go back to normal. Why not? These are just my thoughts. Reading on, North Carolina coach Anson Dorrance said it was evident watching Virginia's win over Miami on Sunday that the Cavaliers were without several regular starters. He said Cavaliers coach Steve Swanson called Monday to say Virginia would not be able to make the trip to Chapel Hill for Thursday's game. All of us in the conference support each other about the decision about whether or not they feel safe enough to come. Dorrance says none of us is going to sit in judgment of a school decision about because obviously some of the decisions are made at the highest level. And the other thing is there's not an athletic department in the country right now that's not interested in saving money. I love that statement. It's true. Any way to get out of it, they want out of it. So Virginia's checks all kinds of positive boxes for Virginia by not coming down. They save money. It protects them because anytime you travel, I think you're at risk. So as a conference, we've all been completely supportive. Dorrance said North Carolina has not had any coronavirus issues since returning to campus. Conference protocols for fall sports team call the COVID-19 testing 3 times per week. But you know who has problems with coronavirus? Those that are scared of it. It's kind of like when you're playing soccer and you go into a tackle. If you go halfway, you're gonna get hurt. But if you go through full force, you're gonna be fine. That's just the way it is. Neither team is scheduled to play again until October 15th, but didnt indicated that it is unlikely the game will be rescheduled. Neither school has an ACCA game scheduled the week of the 19th, but North Carolina has already scheduled a non-conference game against Duke on October 23rd. Adding a second game would necessitate playing with just 1 day of rest, far from unheard of in college soccer, but less than ideal heading into the postseason. We're not going to compromise our kids, didnt said. So that's what's going on with UNC. They want to play. I applaud them for wanting to play, and that's the way we need it. We just need to go play and not find excuses not to play. Coronavirus. Well, guess what? Someone's going to get it. It spreads quick, regardless if it's COVID-19 or COVID something else. It's going to get it. HOPESOLO is making news. So HOPESOLO Fight for Equity continues both in her own lawsuit against US Soccer and the media. Go Hope. Fight the media. I support this. This comes from Yahoo Sports. It's been a while since HOPESOLO played soccer. More than 4 years, in fact, since her abrupt controversial ouster from the U.S. women's national team. So, for the ones that don't remember, HOPESOLO threw a fit. I believe it was Sweden that beat them, and she was called them a bunch of cowards for packing it in. It is annoying when teams do that, but that's part of the game, and you just have to live with it. So, HOPESOLO is still upset to this day, and see how upset she is by reading more. She has moved on with her life, giving birth to a boy and a girl in March with her husband, Jeremy Stevens, and enjoying farm life in North Carolina. That does sound amazing. But even as Solo, arguably the greatest goalkeeper of all time, should ostensibly be out of the spotlight. She remains as relevant in the soccer world as ever. It's not just her role in fighting U.S. soccer over equal pay or even broadcast analyst work for beIN Sports. That keeps her name in the news. And does it? She'll never go out of the news. She can't stop. She's always doing something. She's very conflicted in her thoughts. Sometimes she's like more conservative in the way she does things, and then very liberal, and she's goes back and forth. She really doesn't know who she is. But she's trying to find it. So we're excited for her trying to find it. She says, HOPESOLO says, more people are interested in my life, having twins and fighting for equal pay than she tells Yahoo Sports before cutting herself off, as it was a loss of words. I've been out of the game for quite some time now, so it's kind of, it makes me chuckle that we're still getting a Hollywood magazines for having twins and things like that. That doesn't figure to change anytime soon. Even after years away from the game, bits and pieces of her playing career resonate, keeping her in the conversation, whether it's her recent Hall of Fame snub or her still viable lawsuit against U.S. Soccer. Yeah, so HOPESOLO, she's going to keep fighting. That's just her nature. I think that's what made her a great goalkeeper. She has command, even though she's commanding a lot of things that seem redundant, but she'll hop on. But I do like her. At least she's honest in her thoughts at the moment, kind of like me. I'm kind of honest in my thoughts at the moment, which get me in trouble lots of the times, and I have to say I'm sorry lots of times. So be it. Solo's equal pay lawsuit. Let's talk about this. When Solo first learned that a judge dismissed the wage discrimination case filed by her former U.S. women's national teammate earlier this year, she was crestfallen. Really? Well, you have to have a case, and you need to argue it the right way. It's not all about what you think is right and what may be right. You might want to litigate it a little bit differently like they did. They didn't litigate it in such a way. That's why you have to have good lawyers. Good lawyers win. We all know that, O.J. Simpson. Reading on, the lawsuit was not hers. She was her own separate equal pay case against U.S. Soccer Federation she first filed, which remains unresolved. So her lawsuit is still going, and where I think this is heading is if she wins, it opens things up for the rest of the team. But it was, and I read on, but it was disheartening news nonetheless. She immediately called the U.S. women's national team chief legal counsel, Jeffrey Kessler. She says, to figure out what went wrong. We had a meeting and asked him why in the world this happened, she says. We have an attorney analyze the summary judgment, and we do believe there are some holes. I told the teammates numerous times we can't just rely on attorneys. We have to read every document. We have lived this life, and we know the details. And what I'm afraid happened is they rely too much on the attorneys. No, you need to rely more on the attorneys. And, of course, you need to give them proper information so they can litigate on your behalf. But good lawyers can take care of things. Expensive lawyers. Spend the money, my friends. Spend the money. And it doesn't have to be a male or female lawyer. It needs to be the best lawyer if you want to win. That's just how this world works. And that's why we're in so much trouble, because lawyers do cause a lot of problems. And that's why we can't open half the things we want to open, because coronavirus will get sued. Yep, that's the world we live in. Solo's case, which was filed 7 months before the collective U.S. women's national team player poll pronounced their high-profile case, is very similar to the ones that has gotten the bulk of the attention and was dismissed in May. Both lawsuits argue that U.S. Soccer paid men's national team players more than the women's for the same work via larger performance bonuses. Maybe, maybe not. The way it was dealt with, they understand it legally that the women made more. They did. They should be more fed up that U.S. Soccer is paying the CEO $800,000, plus they're paying $150 a month in addition to that salary for his gym membership. Why doesn't that anger you? That should have came up. That's BS. Reading on. The U.S. women's national team has vowed to appeal the dismissal, but other parts of the lawsuit still need to go before trial. Before that can happen, a process that can be delayed by the pandemic. Solo's case, meanwhile, remains intact. Although the U.S. women's national team case in a class action lawsuit, meaning Solo could join in as a plaintiff, she has declined. Her case is stronger, she said, because never signed onto the 2017 collective bargaining agreement, which is true. That does make sense. So because she didn't sign the agreement that they signed, they signed an agreement, we agreed to these wages, and then 3 years later, you know what? We didn't like it anymore. We're in the limelight. We're winning the World Cup. Let's sue now. Right when the attention is huge. That's their thought process. And that's probably why they lost. It was more about trying to manipulate the media. And I get that's how we want things. We want the media to dictate everything, kind of like this presidential election and the one before that and the one before that. The media gets more and more part of the process. And it doesn't work all the time. You got to have the right judge. You got to make sure it's a judge that's liberal thinking, where they like that manipulation and they'll just vote according to how they feel versus what facts are. That is a problem. It exists, and it's going crazy, which scares me about this presidential election. Trump's going to lose. You could see the Democrats taking over the presidency, the Senate, and the Congress, all of it. And then we'll become like California. How are we not going to be like California? How's that not possible? If you legislate like California, you're going to get a United States of California. No, that's not possible. Trump sent mean tweets. Yeah, that's what's going on. I think a lot of people are being manipulated by the media, and they'll never admit it, and they just do according to what they're fed every frickin' waking moment of the day. It's insane. It's insanity. How about just look and see what's going on right in front of you and judge that. Don't let anything that's come into your head dictate or influence you. You decide what you see in your community. You decide what you see in front of you. That's the way we should function, but we won't. We have to go to CNN and say, what are you telling me to think today? Oh, thank you. Are you one of those? Are you one of those? Maybe. Reading on. I didn't opt in because, this is Hope Solo, because I didn't believe it would put me in the best position knowing that our current players agreed to the CBA, the same CBA we fought for so long so long not to agree to, she adds. So even HOPESOLO just said right there, I didn't agree with the U.S. women's national team's lawsuit because they agreed to terms. And that's what I talk about. HOPESOLO, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. She's like, oh, I'm fighting for you. No, I'm not yet, And she's right. She's right. And I'm going to close it on that. HOPESOLO just said she didn't agree to them. You agreed to these terms, and now you're trying to renege on them because of the timing of the World Cup. And that's why they lost their lawsuit. And maybe this is a process of doing something else and working towards a collective bargaining agreement. And it happens all the time. NBA players and all that. Everyone's never satisfied with what the agreement they made. And that's just horrible. Anyways, the economy is crashing, and it's horrifying, and it scares the living daylights out of me. It's in a situation where college cuts sports programs, lives are destroyed, and that's the next story we're going to talk about right now, which is going to affect soccer, of course, and it's scary. So let's read this article that's from, where's this article from? This is from didnt.com, and it says, throughout the past 6 months, college athletics across the country have logged onto the video calls and watched their athletic director appear on the screen. Then they hear that the administration decided to cut their team. The explanation hardly matters because their minds spin into a whirlwind wondering what comes next. And that's what's coming down the road, ladies and gentlemen. I'm part of sports right now, for now, and we're going to be facing budget cuts as well. And it's scary to think that it all could disappear just like that because the administration says, let's get rid of it now because we don't want to cut this. We'll cut them, and it's easier because we're not talking to them much. I don't know. It's scary for someone that works in athletics. I could see it all disappearing real quick. Reading on, a freshman track and field athlete cried on the bed in his dorm room. He felt angry and screamed. A baseball coach tried to explain the situation to his 2 young children before focusing his efforts on finding his players at a home. Months later, he scrolls through Instagram and struggles with mixed emotions as he sees his players in their new uniforms. Yep, that's happening. The novel coronavirus pandemic has financially strained athletic departments. Schools didn't receive their usual distribution from the NCAA after the men's basketball tournament was canceled. They have lost revenues from student fees and donations. Most conferences are playing shortened football seasons with limited or no fan base, hurting yet another revenue stream. Many smaller schools are no longer receiving the payouts from non-conferences. Matchups against Power 5 program schools have responded to these deficits by eliminating teams. Around 80 Division I programs no longer exist. 81, ladies and gentlemen. That's effectively roughly 1,500 athletes. Success and prominence don't guarantee immunity. Furman baseball had a 125-year history. East Carolina men's swimming won a conference title in February. Power 5 schools, Iowa, Stanford, and Minnesota have discontinued programs. This is what's going on. It's happening across the country, and it's not stopping. It's not letting up because we will stay shut down forever. And the response is, let's stay shut down longer. This will solve. Poverty is going to increase. All we're doing with this shutdown, okay, we're worried about lives on the coronavirus. COVID-19, by the way, not just coronavirus. COVID-19. We're concerned about people dying that way, but we're not concerned about all the other deaths. Are through the roof. Suicide. Poverty kills more than the coronavirus ever dreamed of. It's a domino effect, but everyone's thinking about their own little bubble, especially my friends on Bainbridge Island. Bainbridge Island, it's all these rich millionaires that, for the most part, live there, and they're like, oh, we can survive this. Shut everything down. Keep it all shut down. They shouldn't have a chance to fight. Why they hide in their $1 million houses. They should have no say. I think that's disgusting. I think the people of Bainbridge Island should shut up and stay put. Okay? Stay put in your cozy little houses while the rest of us try to figure out our lives. Okay? The middle class and the poor are being destroyed. not the rich. They're just not eating out as much or missing one of their many vacations. That's what's going on. But, they like kicking and screaming. Just suck it up. Stay in your house. I can't work. I can't pay my. They're getting kicked out of the house. Then what? You don't hear any stories like, why aren't we testing the homeless? Or why aren't we helping them? They're growing, but we're not helping. They just talk about their little communities. Yeah, the rich are fine. They don't care about the poor. Do they really care about the poor? Do they care that people are starving in Africa? No. They don't care. They care about this election. That's all they care about. That is it. And it's sad. Anyways, reading on this sad story of destruction as an Olympic sport at a Division I college, you always have the understanding in the back of your head that if something is going to be cut, it's potentially going to be your sport, said Dan Schumann, a former East Carolina swimmer. It's living in the shadow of the guillotine. Yep. If that day comes, as it recently has for hundreds of athletes that are forced to transfer to new schools or give up their sport to stay on campus. And the thing is, when they transfer to another school, because it's a chance, I can't wait to hear that story. That'll come out soon, where my program was cut, I transferred to another institution, then their program was cut. That's going to happen. That's going to happen a lot because there's a lot of delayed reaction to this. We're all on the chopping block. Anyone part of athletics, you're all on the chopping block. It's going to be horrific as it continues, as we continue to fight. With our government keeps fighting and everyone keeps taking sides. I'm voting all Democrat. I'm voting all Republican. They are both evil. Until you can recognize that and understand that they are causing a problem. Now I'm first time I'm like, am I going to have to choose between the two evils? I'm like, I don't want to be in that situation, but we're getting close to that because so many people support evil. We live in the last days, I'm pretty sure. Reading on, coaches lose their job and must move their families for the next one. This process repeats around the country, each time beginning with an emotional team meeting that leaves athletics scrambling to adjust. In the spring, Trey Asensio and Ben Wendell gave themselves a tour of the University of Kentucky. Asensio and Wendell, now beginning their junior year there, earned starting roles last season at Cincinnati, but if they want to keep playing, they had to leave after their school dropped its soccer program in April. Transferring during a pandemic means no recruiting, visits, or in-person meetings, but they were pleased with what they saw, specifically how green it was, Wendell said. Asensio and Wendell, roommates since freshman year, leased an apartment on short notice and have found it helpful to go through the adjustment process together. Cincinnati practiced in the mornings before class, but Kentucky trained in the afternoons. Kentucky plays a more aggressive style, and practice are more intense. It must be nice to be able to organize that, find new apartments, all that stuff. You know who can't? The poor. Lower middle class. I mean, this is, two student athletes that, in tough situation, but they can figure it out. But not everyone can. That's what I'm talking about. They occasionally find themselves with nothing to add when listening to stories from the past, but they continued growing closer to their new teammates. Practice began in August, and the Wildcats start their season last month. That has helped the most as they learn how their teammates play and develop relationships off the field. Every practice, Wendell said, is a reminder of why I made this decision. Communication among the now dispersed Cincinnati squad has dwindled as players adjust to their new lives, but Asensio and Wendell have stayed in touch with their two other roommates from last year, one who transferred to Albany and another stayed at Cincinnati. Asensio's team issued Cincinnati apparel in the box at his parents' house. He said he doesn't want to be the guy who hangs on to the past schools, but in the future, he'll want to look back on his time at both places. Spending the first 2 months here really put into perspective how lucky we are, Asensio said, because it could have ended for us our career. That is true. We're ending a lot of careers, a lot of opportunities, and that's what we're doing. But there's story after story, and it doesn't stop. We are in a situation of cutting. And who deserves a cut? And that's just going to fall along administration. Who's administration getting along with? Okay? Whoever administration is getting along with, whoever their golfing buddies are, whoever they hang out with will not be cut. They won't. Everyone else will be. So I advise all of you, make friends with administration, because if they're not your buddies, you can kiss your butt goodbye because they're going to cut you. So there's my thoughts on today's podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.